Good evening, everyone.
Um,
Good evening,
yes.
Dr. Rodriguez, my only colleague. Hello.
Yeah.
I know we have some
I
other
am
people
the
joining us
secretary. I
virtually.
had to use you here.
Welcome. Welcome to our public budget hearing. I'll call us to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Dr. Body? Dr. Burrows?
He's here. He didn't say anything.
I wonder if they can hear me. Doctor, you, oh, okay. Ms. Hodgen?
No?
Mrs. Lawrence?
Here.
Mrs. Lilgy?
Here.
Mr. Lopez? Mrs. Moore?
Present.
Dr. Rodriguez?
Present.
Mrs. Willis?
She's here.
Quorum is present.
Thank you. Any additions to this agenda this evening?
No.
Okay, we'll get started with our presentation, our fiscal year 2022 budget presentation. Sam, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, President Lawrence. Every year we have to do a budget public hearing on our budget presentation for fiscal year 22, which starts on July 1 and goes through June 30th of 2022. I am going to turn it over to John and Kim, and we'll remind you this is being recorded and will be available on our website. So, John, go ahead.
Thank you, Superintendents Trophy. So we are going to present the budget. Kind of had a preview a couple weeks ago. Nothing in the bottom line has changed, so a lot of the figures you see are kind of similar. So but we'll obviously take any questions that you have when we're done. So we are going to talk about some assumptions, what we know and don't know is our revenues, our expenditures, 4-year budget and fund balance trend, and then any questions. So what we do know is retirement rate from the state that we're required to pay is now an average of 29.64%. So that's every dollar of salary we are required to pay for the retirement, almost 30 cents on the dollar for the MIPSER's retirement plan. District payment of health. State also requires a maximum that districts can pay in health insurance, and that's called the hard cap, and that increased by 3.7%. And then we're talking a little bit about property tax revenues. And just a little recap on that this year. So for next year, we're looking at, for our general operating revenues, 17.4478 mils. And that is a reduction from the prior year because of the Headley rollback. And just as a reminder for what the Headley rollback means is that if property tax values increase higher than the rate of inflation, then we cannot levy more than that in taxes. So that's a good thing for property taxes. And we are still getting more, or at least as much as revenue as we had in the prior year, and a little bit more because of the increase anyway. So it's in one way it's a loss, but it's not really a loss in revenue. Debt for our bonds that we had for the construction projects going on. Last year was 4.6 mils, and this year it's going to be 4.1. And these we just have to levy mills that allows us to be able to pay our debt payments. So it kind of matches the revenues that are coming in. Sinking fund, as you know, it's not 3, so we had our head roll back on that also last year and a little bit of this year. But again, we're still likely to get more in revenue than prior year just because of the increase in property tax values. What we don't know, state aid adjustments. Of course, the legislature is still debating between the House, Senate, and Governor what the foundation balance will be, what sort of increase. So we have budgeted a modest increase of $100 per pupil. Feel safe, and that's kind of conservative, but hopefully it's more. But for budgeting purposes, that's what we are planning on here. And then enrollment, of course, is a big thing too, as far as not knowing what our enrollment will be fully like. So what our current projections are is 9,722 for the year, lost from last year, but hopefully if we get back to normal, we can raise that back up. One thing that we didn't note on here that I just want to point out is also the ESSER funds. We've talked about that many times. Due to some current activity in the legislature, there is some hope that hopefully they get appropriated soon. That's for the ESSER 2 and 3. We did receive a grant award notice this past week for the first 43% of ESSER's 2, which was around 13 million. But we have not changed our plans yet just because of how late in the year it is. That's part of our plans to use those funds in next year's budget. So going on, Kim, we'll go ahead and talk about revenues now.
Good evening. For revenues, we have several different types of revenues in our budget, one of which is local revenues. Local revenues are things like property tax levies, miscellaneous revenue, which is print shop, rebates, etc., and facility rentals and leases. We also have state revenues. State revenues include state aid and the ISD special education transportation revenue. We have federal revenues such as Medicaid outreach. Ingham ISD provides revenues to the district, special education tuition, county special ed, and center-based programs such as Beekman. We have transfers from other funds, which is really just indirect from food service. And we have categorical or grant-funded revenues. Those are local, state, and federal funding sources. For fiscal year 22, we have budgeted $165,009,000, and they are in the buckets that we just spoke about, but they're listed below in the pie chart. So you can see that the biggest sources of revenue for the district are state funds and the grants.
All right, I'll talk a little bit about expenditures. Of course, the largest part of our expenditures are staffing, salaries and benefits. And these are looking at the non-categorical, the biggest part there, which is the non-grant, so the regular general fund. Estimated to just be under about 81 million for this year. We also have budgets for our departments and schools that are considered discretionary funds. That they can use for, supplies, equipment for their offices, that sort of thing, instructional materials. For departments, it's about 28 million, and school budgets a little over 1 million. And then the grant budgets, which are also called the categorical funds, mainly through the state and federal, some local, but just under 57 million projected for this year. And so those are revenues. Just to note that those revenues are equal to expenditures. So again, those do not affect the general fund balance because we match revenues to expenditures. And just a kind of a little summary of what our estimated staffing is by bargaining group this year. About 852 FTE, and these are FTE, not headcount, for on the general non-grant side. Grant funded positions just over 305, so a total estimated staffing of 1,157 FTE for this upcoming year, excuse me. And kind of just a little trend of that, how we've had to adjust staffing to kind of match enrollment. Obviously, if there's a reduction in enrollment, then staffing wouldn't be as much needed. Some of it, as noted, that we talked about a couple weeks ago, is there's some attrition and resignation, so retirements, that sort of thing, that we can either not fill or fill with other positions if they're being funded by like the REAP grant that went away this year. So as those positions were eliminated because no longer the REAP funding, we can shift those into positions instead of having to go out and recruit and hire new people. So again, as you can see, with the enrollment change and the staffing change, it kind of follows along with that. So overall, our kind of the same kind of chart as the revenues, just showing you a chart of 49% of our costs are wages and benefits on the general fund side. With the grants, you added another 34% expenditures. And then the discretionary side, about 17% of our expenditures. And Kim?
And so then in summary, we have the data in a resolution type format. So this page shows the proposed resolution for next year for revenues, and then the current year amendment 3, and then the prior 2 fiscal years. So for next year, we're estimating again 165,009,000 for revenues. And then this page shows expenditures and the effective fund balance. So for next year, we're expecting 166,976,000 in expenditures, and John just went through those, which means we're planning on the use of fund balance for this document because we know things are changing with ESSER, but a use of fund balance of 1.9 million. So that will bring our fund balance at June 30 of 2022 down to 11,000. I'm sorry, now I did what John did. $11,986,515.
And that is the budget presentation. So we'd be glad to answer any questions or comments. And Madam President, if you want me to stop sharing so you can see if people have raised their hands virtually, you can do that.
That would be great, John. Thank you. Any questions from board members? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anything else, Sam?
I would just add that if some of our attendees are here for our regular board meeting at 6 o'clock, you're going to have to sign out of this meeting to sign into that meeting. And that would include our board members too, because we have a different sign in for our 6 o'clock meeting. Okay? Thank you, Madam President. That concludes our report tonight.
Thank you very much. At 5:42, this budget hearing is adjourned. See you at 6 o'clock.